Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel. And in this video we're going to look at respiration biology. So without any further ado, let's get to the lesson part. Okay, so under respiration we shall look at the following content. So the first one we shall look at is the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and what is an APT as energy, and uses of ATP in humans, as well as the process of respiration, experiments involved in respiration, gaseous exchange in humans, gaseous exchange in the alveolus and the trachea system in insects, and gaseous exchange in in fish, and breathing and composition of inhaled and exhaled air, and respiratory disease lastly. So without any further ado, let's start the topic. This topic is quite simple and straightforward. This is one of the major topics in biology. It's a must to know them. So without any further ado, let's start the biology lesson. So here we have what? All cells in living organisms, both in animals and plants, need energy for carrying out all the processes. So we know that the fact that all living things need energy to carry out all the processes in their bodies. So respiration. What is respiration? Respiration is a chemical process by which energy is produced from the food. So the process by which energy is produced from food is called respiration. That's the whole main thing about this topic. We want to look at how energy is made from from food. That's what you call respiration, and other factors along which affect respiration. So moving on, this process is usually referred to as tissue respiration or cellular respiration. Those are other names you can use to describe respiration. There are two types of respiration. Namely, you have aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So here the key thing you need to know to master these two types of respiration is that begin aerobic. Here is aerobic. Also here so it is aerobic. So if you want to differentiate the two, what you do, you will notice that the one with aerobic respiration starts with A. Then the one with ana, the prefix is ana. On this one the prefix is A. That's how you differentiate, but the ending part of the suffix is the same. So that's how you differentiate those two. You can also differentiate them by definition. So the word aerobic simply means that oxygen is needed for this chemical reaction, and anaerobic means the absence of oxygen. That's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic respiration, this involves of oxygen. So in order for you to get energy from food, you need oxygen to be available. Then anaerobic respiration is a type of respiration whereby you don't need oxygen for energy to be made from food. That's the main difference. So it involves of gaining not gaining in the presence of oxygen or without oxygen. That's the main difference there. But the process is the same. Okay, so moving on, we have moving on to the next point, saying that both types of respiration take place in a series of small steps, not in one jump. Like I said, so respiration doesn't not take in one jump, on one time, boom, respiration has occurred. It takes a series of steps. There are steps which need to be followed, or which need to occur before respiration takes place, and each small step needs its own enzyme. So difference between anaerobic and aerobic respiration can be represented in using a table, and that table can look like this one here. So oxygen in aerobic is needed. In aerobic is both needed. This one needed. So water during aerobic respiration, water is produced, while during anaerobic respiration, water is not produced. So even location begin in and continues into a form. So this is the numbers, the numeral numbers which are here, simply representing the diagram which is below. So efficiency, very good. ATP from glucose produces ATP per glucose. So the one which is very efficient is what? Aerobic respiration. That's why when you're running or you're doing exercise, you gasp for air. In that air, you need what? Oxygen. So what? Why? So that air you are gasping in should be used to convert food into energy. That's why aerobic is more efficient than anaerobic. We shall look at we shall look in this more detail. So these are the answers there. So let's look at ATP as energy. So what is ATP as energy? Energy from respiration is not directly used by organism, meaning that when energy is made from food, it's not directly used by the organisms. Nope. It first have to be temporarily stored in a chemical substance called what? Adenosine triphosphate, or otherwise ATP. The full weight of ATP is what? Adenosine triphosphate. That's when, so immediately after the energy has been converted from food, it's converted to what? To ATP as what? Adenosine what? Triphosphate. Never organism will never use what? Energy which is made from the food direct. No, it have to be first stored in a temporary chemical substance known as what? Adenosine what? Triphosphate. So ATP is sometimes called the currency of energy for the cell. When there is need for energy, ATP is decomposed to ADP, and the phosphate group by the action of an enzyme called ATP or ATPase. So when energy is needed, that ATP is converted into what? Into ADP. So here's a diagram here. Though it's not that properly shown, let me try to explain it. So looking at this diagram, they're saying that so first of all, like we said, when energy is made from the food, in other words, when respiration occurs, that energy which is produced at the end is not directly used by the organism. So what happens? It is stored. It is stored where? In form of what? Adenosine triphosphate. So now when the body needs what? Oxygen, or when the body needs what? Energy. What happens? So this process which is being shown here is what happens. So firstly, I'm just zoom in. Okay. So firstly, here the energy goes down from what? From where it's stored, then it's converted into what? Adenosine phosphate. Adenosine phosphate. Just like that. So that's the process which is occurring. All these have been explained into what? This introduction there. So moving on, we have the uses of ATP in what? In humans. So mode of action: heartbeat, breathing, and movement of the body. Formation of peptide bonds in proteins. All this ATP is used to form bonds in what? In proteins. It is also used to growth, synthesis of chromosomes, cell membrane, and etc. So it is also used. It is also used as structure change of membrane proteins to transport. Okay, so other uses: to make ionic gradient across cell membrane of an axon by NK sodium potassium pumps throughout the body. So energy released to keep what? Body warm. All that is used what? In order for all these processes which are here to happen, you need what? You need this, which is ATP or adenosine triphosphate. It's used for growth. Used to make bonds between proteins. It's used to make ionic gradient across the membrane of a oxygen by NK pumps. Okay, moving on. So I have an exercise here, simple exercise saying, name the chemicals in the brackets in the above table. So adenosine triphosphate, ATP, muscle construction, protein synthesis, cell division, active transport. So here, if you look at here, I've seen this one here, number 1, right? You have number 1. You have number 1. Number 1 is that answer for what? Number 1, which is this one here. So adrenal synthesis is what? It is used for heartbeat energy, of course. Heartbeat. Breathing is used in breathing, respiration after score and peristalsis, movement of the body is for use. Then the formation of peptides bonds in protein. What do you call that? Uses of what? ATP again, one and the same thing. And then muscle construction falls under what? Under the growth of synthesis of chromosomes and membrane. I saw that. So moving on to the process of respiration. How does respiration occurs? So the following points will explain how respiration occurs. So the food mainly used for energy in cells is what? Is glucose. The food mainly used for energy in cells is what? Glucose. So respiration must not be confused with what? The process of what? Breathing. They are two different processes, which is also sometimes called respiration. Breathing can also be called respiration, but they are not what? The same as breathing. Remember, earlier on in this video, we defined respiration as what? The process by which food is converted into what? Energy. That's what you call what? Respiration. While breathing is a removal of carbon dioxide from the body. In a simple way, you can define it in that term. So moving on, cellular respiration begins with what? Glycolysis in both types of respiration. Glycolysis is a process by which glucose is converted to pyruvate and small amounts of energy is released. So glycolysis is a process by which glucose is converted to pure pyruvate and small amounts of energy is released. So moving on, glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of cells. A series of steps of glycolysis can be summarized by the following equation. So glucose converted to 2 pyruvate plus 2 little energy. That's how you can define the process of what? Glycolysis, the converting of glucose into pyruvate. Simple as that. So depending on the availability of oxygen, pyruvate enter one of the two pathways that completes the cellular respiration of aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration. So looking on, let's look at the aerobic respiration. So this is the reactions in cells that uses what? Oxygen to break down nutrients to release energy. So this is a type of respiration whereby oxygen is used to break down what? Nutrients to release what? Energy. That's what we call what? Aerobic respiration. So moving on, the food molecules are combined with oxygen. The process is called what? Oxidation, and the food is said to be what? Oxidized. So moving on here, aerobic respiration is given by the equation whereby you have glucose plus oxygen in the presence of what? An enzymes. The end product will be what? Carbon dioxide plus water, and 2830 energy of joules is what? Produced at the end of a chemical reaction. So moving on here, we have the reaction takes place in small steps, everything step by step, or in other words, pole. It does not occur simultaneously or at the same time. We take it step by step. So moving on, although the energy is used for the process in the body, such as concentration of muscles, building up proteins from amino acids, cell divisions, active transport, etc., some of it is always what? It always appears as heat. So moving on, in warm-blooded animals, birds and mammals, some of this heat is retained to maintain their body temperature. So you have this diagram here carbon atom, molecule of glucose, the structure of glucose, you know that is 6 H12 and the O6. Okay, so this is the process of what? Aerobic what? Respiration. It can be simplified, using what? The diagram. So you have anaerobic what? Respiration. So anaerobic respiration, what is anaerobic respiration? A common example is the action of yeast on sugar solution to produce what? Alcohol. A common example of anaerobic respiration is what? The action of yeast on sugar solution to produce what? Alcohol. So when yeast act on the sugar solution to produce alcohol, that is called what? Anaerobic respiration. A good example. So the sugar is not completely oxidized to carbon dioxide and water, but converted to carbon dioxide and alcohol. This process is called fermentation and is shown by the following equation. So glucose plus, in the presence of enzymes, gives us what? Alcohol plus carbon dioxide and plus 118 joules of energy. So if you compare the two equations which we have seen, for one for anaerobic and the one for aerobic respiration, you'll see that the common product is what? Carbon dioxide. Now the different product is what? In anaerobic, get me clearly here, in anaerobic respiration, alcohol is produced, while in aerobic respiration, water is what? Is produced, and energy, and carbon dioxide. Here is alcohol, there is what? Water. That's a difference. So the process of brewing and bread making rely on what? Anaerobic respiration by yeast. So the process of making cachaso and anything else under the process of fermentation, it really depends on what? Anaerobic what? Respiration what? By yeast. No oxygen is present in other words. So the reaction takes place in small steps and needs several different enzymes. The yeast uses the energy for its growth and living activities. But you can see from the equation that less energy is produced by anaerobic respiration than in anaerobic what? Respiration. This is because alcohol still contains a lot of energy that the yeast is unable to use. So anaerobic respiration also occurs in muscles during vigorous exercise, because oxygen cannot be delivered fast enough to satisfy the needs of their respirating muscles. So when you're doing exercise, they can ask you, or a question can be phrased like this: when a person is doing vigorous exercise, which type of respiration occurs? Is it anaerobic or aerobic respiration? So the answer is what? Anaerobic. Why? Because when a person is doing a lot of exercise, the muscles will require a lot of energy, but since the energy have to come through your mouth, go into the lungs, go into the heart, and go to the other parts of the body, it's a long process for oxygen to move from the lungs to the muscles. So to avoid that shortage of oxygen in the muscles, what happens? Anaerobic respiration occurs in the muscles to provide oxygen, or to provide energy for the mass, and not oxygen. Hope we're clear there. So the products are different to those produced by anaerobic respiration in yeast. The process is shown by the following equation. So glucose forms what? Lactic acid. Lactic acid builds up the muscles and causes muscle fatigue, cramp. So when someone will have cramps, just know that lactic acid has been produced by the anaerobic respiration in that person's body. So meaning anaerobic respiration has occurred too much in the muscles of that body. That's why you hear when a runner or athletes are running, all of a sudden they fell down and they said, okay, they have they have muscle cramps, and all that simply means that the muscles did not have enough oxygen, and anaerobic respiration occurred, and as the anaerobic respiration occurred, lactic acid was produced. So these are the effects of lactic acid. It causes muscle cramps. So anaerobic respiration is less efficient than anaerobic respiration because it releases much less each. Hope that's clear. So experiment involved in respiration. So experiment to determine whether oxygen is taken up during respiration. So the procedures: boil some water to expel all the dissolved oxygen. When cool, use the boiled water to make up experiment. I'll just try to explain this. They normally come in the exam. So interpretation: the fact that the lime water goes milky shows that the yeast glucose mixture is producing carbon dioxide. How do you know that? Because the lime water goes milky. That's how you're able to know that the mixture produces or is producing carbon dioxide. If you assume that the production of carbon dioxide is evidence of respiration, then it looks as if the yeast is respiring. In setting up the experiment, you took care to see that the oxygen was removed from the glucose solution and the yeast was suspension, and the liquid paraffin excluded air, including oxygen, from the mixture. Any respiration taking place must therefore be anaerobic without oxygen. Control: it might be suggested that the carbon dioxide came from the chemical reaction between the yeast and the glucose, as shown between the chalk and the acid, which had nothing to do with respiration or any other living processes. A control should therefore be set up using the same procedure as before, but with yeast that has been killed by the boiling. A failure, in this case, to produce carbon dioxide supports the claim that it was living processes in the yeast in the first experiment that produced carbon dioxide. So now let's look at gaseous exchange in humans. Cells are supplied with oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. In humans and other mammals, oxygen is obtained from the air by means of the lungs. In the lungs, oxygen dissolves in the blood and is carried to the tissues by the cellular system. Characteristics of respiration surfaces in humans: the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide across the respiratory surface, as in the lungs, depends on the diffusion of these two gases. So involves of exchange, gases exchange take place in the lungs involve diffusion of two gases, namely oxygen and carbon dioxide. So the rate of diffusion increases if there is a large surface area exposed to the gas. The distance across which diffusion has to take place is small. There is good blood supply, and there is a big difference in concentration of the gas at 2 points brought out by ventilation. So these are the ways to diffuse to increase the rate of diffusion. Large surface area. So the presence of millions of alveoli in the lungs provides a very large surface area for gaseous exchange. One layer is the alveolus wall, the other is the capillary wall. Thus, the distance for diffusion is very short. So good blood supply. The alveoli are surrounded by networks of blood capillaries. Constant removal of oxygen by the blood in the capillaries lining the alveoli keeps its concentration low. Therefore, diffusion gradient, which favors the rapid diffusion of oxygen from the air passage to the alveolar lining, is maintained. The constant delivery of carbon dioxide from the blood into the alveoli and this removal from their air passages by ventilation similarly maintains a diffusion gradient that promotes the diffusion of carbon dioxide from the alveoli lining into the bronchioles. So ventilation. So ventilation of the lungs helps to maintain the steep diffusion gradient between the air at the end of the air passage and the alveoli air. So the concentration of oxygen in the air at the end of the air passage is high because the air is constantly being replaced by the breathing actions. Oxygen has to dissolve in the thin film of moisture before passing across the infilum. Lung structure matters as well. So the lungs are enclosed in the pharynx chest region. They have a spongy texture and can be expanded and compressed by movements of the pharynx in such a way that air is sucked in and blown out. The lungs are joined to the back of the mouth by the windpipe of the trachea. The trachea divides into smaller tubes called bronchi. Singular, they are known as what? Bronchus, which enter the lungs and divide into even smaller branches. The branches divide further into branchioles. These fine branches end in a mass of what? Little or thin-walled punch-like air sacs called alveoli. The epiglottis stops full from entering the air passage when we swallow. So we have the diagram here. So the larynx or voice box, it's known what? The larynx. The structure there, we have section through the lip, intercostal muscles, left lung, alveoli, branchial and bronchus. Here is clear. You can see they have a diaphragm there. So gaseous exchange in the alveolus. The alveoli have a thin single cell layer elastic walls called what? Epithelium. Beneath the epithelium is a dense network of capillaries supplied with deoxygenated what? Blood. The blood from which the body has taken oxygen is pumped from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery. This is how it looks. It looks like inside the alveoli. So the blood from which the body takes the blood from which the body has taken oxygen is pumped from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery. So ventilation refers to the movement of air into and out of the lungs. That's how we define ventilation. Gaseous exchange refers to the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So capillary from the pulmonary artery and film of moisture effusion of the alveolus. So moving on here, the diagram above shows how oxygen reaches the red blood cells and how carbon dioxide escapes from the blood. The oxygen combines with the hemoglobin in the red blood cells, forming oxyhemoglobin. So this is how the oxygen moves in, and the carbon dioxide moves out, shown by these arrows here moving in that direction. I shall attempt some questions on the same topic at the end of this video. So the capillary is carrying oxygenated blood from the alveoli, join up to form the pulmonary vein. So the capillary is carrying oxygenated blood from the alveoli, join up to form the pulmonary vein, which returns blood to the left atrium of the heart. From here, it enters the left ventricle and is pumped around the body, so supplying the tissue with oxygen. Structural system in insects. So we're going to look at the structural system in insects. Many insects are attached terrestrial, that is, they live on land. That's the meaning of terrestrial. They live on land. Like other terrestrial animals, insects face a problem of water loss, which can lead to dehydration. To prevent dehydration, insects are covered by a waterproof wasp cuticle, which is called a chitney. So chitney is covered by is a cover. While offering protection against dehydration, the cuticle also acts as a barrier to gaseous exchange. So this is the spiracle of an insect. Openings to the atmosphere are found in the cuticle of the thorax and the abdomen. That's why you find the openings of to the atmosphere of an insect. Meaning abdomen. These openings are called the spiracles. The spiracles allow air to pass in and out of the insect body. Spiracles are directly connected to a network of fine tubes traveling while insect body called the structure. Singular is known as structure. So spiracles are directly connected to a network of fine tubes traversing whole insect body. So they are around all the insect of the body. These spiracles are all around the body of the insect. So I'm trying to say there. So moving on, we have The structure thus permits through the insect body and end in the tissue as very tiny tubes called tracheoles. The tracheoles are the sites of gaseous exchange in insects. So the gaseous exchange, the site of gaseous exchange in insects is called what? This the tracheole. This is where gaseous exchange occurs in insects. So moving on, we have gaseous exchange in fish. So fish obtain oxygen from water in the form of diffused air by using gills located in the gill chamber. That's how they obtain oxygen, by diffusing air using the gills. So the gills are covered and protected by a small circular flap called the opicum. Each gill is made of filamentous outgrowths called the gill filaments. The gill filaments provide a large surface area for gaseous exchange. This is how it looks. Diagrams of the fish. This is another view at which how oxygen diffuses in the lungs or in the gills of the fish. Events in the gaseous exchange in the fish. Number one, step one, the mouth inspiration. During inspiration, the mouth opens up. During expiration, the mouth closes. Then during the volume of mouth and pharynx increases during expiration. During expiration, it decreases. The openum closes when inspiration is occurring in fish, while during expiration it opens up. Pressure in gill chamber decreases, increases. Water enter, water comes out. So we're going to look at breathing in human beings. So breathing refers to the movement of air in and out of the lungs, which is brought out about the changes in the volume of the pharynx or chest. So each time you breathe, there's a change in the chest, in your chest. And of this part here, the diagram, to the chest part, you have external intercostal muscles, which are there. You have the sternum there, and the rib, and the spinal column. So these changes are caused by the action of two muscles, the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. So during inhaling, what happens, and during exhaling? So number one, during inhaling, the intercostal muscles contract, while during exhaling they relax. Intercostal muscles relax during inhaling. Internal, you also have internal, external intercostal muscles, and internal intercostal muscles. So what happens to these muscles during this process of inhaling and exhaling? So during exhaling, the external intercostal muscles contract, and while during exhaling they relax. While during intercostal, what happens to the intercostal muscles during inhaling? They relax and they contract during exhaling. So the diaphragm flattens during inhaling, and during exhaling they evaluate, they increase. In other words, the movement of the ribs upwards and outwards, downwards and upwards. I'm sure the table is clear to interpret. So moving on, here we have the outside of the lungs, and the inside of the thorax are lined with a smooth membrane called the pleural membrane. This produces a thin layer of liquid called pleural liquid, which reduces the friction between the lungs and the inside of the thorax. So the diagram below shows the mechanisms during breathing. So composition of inhaled and exhaled air. Difference in composition of inhaled and expelled air are shown in the table below. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and the like. The lining of the alveoli is coated with a film of moisture in which the oxygen dissolves. Some of this Some of this moisture evaporates into the alveoli and saturates the air with water vapor. So the exhaled air contains more water vapor than the air in breathing. Why? Because evaporation takes place in the alveoli. So the presence of water vapor in the expelled air is easily demonstrated by breathing on a cold mirror. Condensation quickly builds up on the glass's surface. I'm sure you have experienced that. The exhaled air is warmer as well. So in cold temperatures climates, you see heat to the atmosphere by breathing. So looking at respiratory diseases, the following are the respiratory diseases that affect the respiratory system. You have bronchitis, inflammation of the bronchus tubes leading to excess mucus in the bronchi. You have pleurisy, inflammation of the pleural membrane. You have phenoconitis, inflammation of lungs due to and absorbed oxalic dust. These are the following disease. So moving on here, you have causes of those diseases of Smoking causes many respiratory diseases as well as coronary ones. So when they say coronary ones, it simply means the heart as well. Harmful substances in the tobacco are nicotine, tar, carbon monoxide, etc. Substances are known as cancer-inducing chemicals called carcinogen. This affects not only smokers but also the people in the same room. The people are called passive smokers, those who are affected by the people who smoke, but they themselves they don't smoke. They are known as passive smokers. So the following are the harmful effects of smoking. So short-term cough and cold, long-term stroke. Student preparation. So now let's look at questions and respiration. So question 1, like I said at the end of the video, we're going to look at some questions on the same topic. So the diagram shows some apparatus used in investigating gas exchange. The thermometer, colored oil drop, graduated scale, determining. So we're looking at question 1. Okay, so we're going to look at question 1. Okay. So looking at the diagram here, let's read the question. The diagram shows some apparatus used in investigating gas exchange. Okay, so you have a following diagram right there. By measuring the movement of oil drop in the apparatus, what can be investigated? So we have A, carbon dioxide released during germination. B, heat released during germination. C, oxygen used during germination. And D, water produced during germination. So what is your answer there? You can leave your answer in the comment section, then I'll reply whether it's correct or not. So you can attempt these questions right here and leave your answers in the comment section, then I'll be able to respond. Okay, thank you for watching my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.